We talked about the brain needs sensory input to thrive. I don't care what age you are. Used to be, when I started in practice, even back then, the theory was that after the age of 5, you could not remodel a brain. It was hardwired, and that was what you're stuck with. That's a bunch of bull honky. All right? All right. And we know that there's certain areas of the brain, especially the hippocampus, your memory center, that continues to have neuroplastic abilities. Thank you. So we know that in order for the brain to thrive, it needs proper sensory input from the external environment, how it perceives. It's how the brain perceives the input that's key, and from our internal awareness. Interception. In the world of neuropsych, interception is a huge research field right now, okay? It gives you the sense of self. If you do not have a good sense of self, if your brain cannot interpret what's going on inside your body, you are disconnected. Your body and brain and body are disconnected. You're disconnected to some degree from yourself and from the world. You do not have a good sense of self. That is the crux of the neurobiology of disease, physical, mental, emotional illness. So I like to do weird things. I stay up to 2 in the morning and I do a lot of reading, a lot of research. I, from every field, neurodevelopment, neuropsych, biochemistry, metabolic, you name it, and I all pull it together. And it always comes back to chiropractic for me, all of it. It's like they write, sometimes I think, thank you for writing this because you wrote it for us, but why aren't we talking about it? Why are we not the ones out there talking about this? Because interoception, that internal awareness, is all about sensory input coming in from our body up to the brain and being organized and integrated in a fashion that the brain can interpret it and send a proper response down. So, one few months ago, almost a year ago now, probably, I got a beautiful paper and I'm just digging it. I'm like, shit, this is all chiropractic, right? It's all about interception in different areas of the brain. And I was just going to town. And there's one area of the brain called the precuneus. That's a little part of the brain, but does a lot of stuff. Okay. It interprets a lot of stuff, especially movement and joint mobility, joint movement. And it was just, and it's, it's the upcoming part of the brain that's being studied in neuroscience and in neuropsych, in the neuropsych world. And I was just loving this paper. So, as what I always do, I send it to one of my closest friends and mentor, who my dear co-partner here, Dr. Heidi Havoc in New Zealand. So we send papers back and forth and we talk about them. It's holy shit. Yeah. So a few weeks later, my husband one morning gets up and goes, "Hey, did you see Hides is being interviewed by Russell Brand?" And I said, no. I started laughing. I started giggling. She had posted something about talking about the study that she did with Dr. Jerome. And it was a 6-week trial of chiropractic care, random. And so I messaged her and I said, I suppose you can't tell me the findings because the interview wasn't being released yet. It had to be, Russell Brand's team had to edit it, right? And I said, I don't know if you can tell me the findings, but you know how I am. And so she goes, I'm in London right now. I'm shopping. As soon as I can get a break, I'll tell you, I'll message you. I'm like, okay. I was getting ready for something. I was in the bathroom and we're going back. But then all of a sudden, she starts texting me the findings. And I literally, thank goodness I was in the bathroom, because not in the bathroom, but I was getting ready in the bathroom, but I wanted to pee my pants. Like I wanted to pee my pants. And my husband's, I'm like, oh my God, Michael, you're not going to freaking believe this. And our husbands always look at each other. Oh God, they're on a roll again. Now, mind you, I just read that brilliant study a few weeks before, and we were talking about it like, oh man, we'd love to do this study in chiropractic. And she hadn't had the results of this yet. What did they find? They found that the chiropractic adjustment affects processing, affects function in that precuneus area of the brain. You get that? We need to talk about this stuff. We need to have these conversations because they're having it in the neurodevelopmental, the neuropsych, all those other areas. That's what we need to own. And there was other areas like, oh, I don't know, something called the hippocampus for memory. That might be important, all right? And the orbital frontal cortex, which is really big in the neuropsych world. This is our gift. If you haven't listened to the interview, you can go on YouTube and still find it. But it's brilliant, okay? And they show that the outcomes of depression, anxiety, sleep, it's amazing, right? So sometimes we take these things for granted. So let's dive a little bit deeper. All right, another study come out. And first, I want to pause for just a minute because there's many of us out there speaking this language now. There's many programs, there's many mentors. There's many people talking about neurologically focused and brain-based chiropractic, and I would like to pause and I would like to thank those of the shoulders that people like myself and others are standing upon because they need recognition. Dean Harrison's out there doing research. Bernard Murphy, that was Heidi's mentor. My best friend and mentor, Dr. Heidi Havoc and her team. We need to acknowledge them, and I want to publicly acknowledge them right now. Thank you for giving me the information to give to others. And many more. And for those that I'm not mentioning, my point is we need to recognize when we're up on stages and we're giving this information, we need to recognize where that's coming from and the hard work that they're doing. So this came out and this just blew my freaking socks off as well. So looking at adjusting a subluxated segment versus a non-subluxated segment. My friends, don't you think that is important for the chiropractic profession? This cuts us, sets us apart from physiotherapists. My undergrad is in physiotherapy, all right? I was anti chiropractic, all right? But this is our lingo, this is our gold. So, a cervical subluxated vertebral segment versus a non subluxated segment. Do you think that adjusting a subluxated segment versus a non subluxated segment is going to make a difference on the brain function? Absa freaking lutely. And that's exactly what they found. That if you adjusted a vertebral subluxated segment, say that 5 times fast when you haven't had sleep, that there's a difference on the brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex, which her and her team have shown over and over again, that adjusting the spine affects sensory processing in the prefrontal cortex. What did I say was the number one thing the brain needed to thrive? Proper sensory input. And this is an area of the brain that's our executive functioning. That's our higher consciousness that sets us apart as humans from any other species. It's our reasonable, rational, emotional part, control center of our brain. It's our anti inflammatory center of the brain. That's our brain. Are you getting it? This is the part of the brain that most people with, that almost everybody with a neurodevelopmental disorder is offline. They can't make eye contact. They can't have social engagement skills. This is the part of the brain where people give up in life. It's not working. This is the part of the brain that lets them commit suicide versus talking themselves out of it. This is the part of the brain that people can't be rational and they go out and shoot in schools. This is us. Why are we not talking about this? Sorry, I'm in a bit of a, you'll see why in a minute, hopefully. This is a study on police officers. We know that there's a crisis in this country with law enforcement. They look at the word they're using, resiliency. Resiliency. They found that if a person has higher resiliency in the prefrontal cortex, what did I just say? That Heidi and her team have shown over and over again that we affect. If they have a higher resiliency in the prefrontal cortex, they mitigate PTSD. Do you get that? So why isn't everybody being adjusted? Because trauma happens. Shit happens to people. But if they have the ability to neurally adapt, they can work their way out of it and they don't have to give up. They don't have to think they have to end things.